My partner, presumably now ex, but who knows anything anymore, told me that I'm abusive, and now I'm questioning literally everything I think, say, and do. I want to clarify something from the beginning because I haven't done so until now, and it may be somewhat relevant. The child I refer to in this narrative is my own, not ours, but not boyfriend has been a part of his life since he was 4 years old. I believe it's accurate to state that it was not until midway through last year that I ever asked not boyfriend to assist with childcare or school drop-off pickup. A couple of weeks ago, I, 30, non-binary, gave not boyfriend, 30M, hereafter referred to as NB, a deadline of today to make a decision regarding living here should we make it official or seek an alternative arrangement for him. He has been residing with me without contributing to expenses for over a year. I told him I couldn't bear to see him in the situation he was in, living on a friend's sofa, and made it clear that if he returned there, I would not be able to see him again. To elaborate, he arrived one day in such severe back and shoulder pain that I had to help him undress for a shower. When I soaked his clothes before washing them, the water turned brown almost immediately, and he constantly dropped by to collect change for his utility meters. A few weeks ago, I informed him that he needed to make a choice. Soon after, he damaged one of my doors without informing me and then lied about it when I asked him the first time. As a result, I told him that between that and numerous other issues, such as lack of contribution around the house, while I managed as many as 4 pages of tasks daily, the fact that he owes me over $300, even when we divide household expenses evenly, that he woke me up for intimate moments knowing I was ill and had barely 2 hours of sleep, and the fact that he had recently questioned me on several things I was entirely confident about, which really stung since that sort of interaction is rare for me. I had made his decision for him and requested that he leave. I cannot have someone around who damages my property, especially when I have been spending money and investing several weeks of effort to finally organize our shared living space. He told me that it had been his plan all along and then came downstairs, accusing me of being a hypocrite for speaking negatively about the abusive boyfriend next door, while being a domestic abuser yourself, bringing up events from 5 years before he moved in, events I believed we had already addressed. He said I brushed off his feelings about my engaging in full-service sex work by claiming I was only doing it for the money to afford enjoyable things. Those enjoyable things included saving for private dental work, establishing an emergency fund due to my retail hours being as low as 12 some weeks, purchasing birthday presents for my son that year, and occasionally treating myself to sushi and a gin and tonic mixer for breakfast. He accused me of emotionally manipulating him when we first got together. At that time, I was polyamorous and involved in a relationship with a man I adored. When he expressed discomfort with my situation, I told him I did not think I could commit to only one partner and subsequently decided to end both relationships. That week, I lost both partners and my best friend, who decided he never wanted contact with me again. I was devastated. I didn't eat for nearly a week until I found myself curled up on the kitchen floor in agony, forcing down a slice of my child's leftover pizza. I was in a terrible state, and given how long ago it was and my emotional state then, all I can recall from that time is how deeply I was suffering, so I have to take his word for it. I acknowledge that I have recently belittled him for his lack of contribution, as I am frustrated. I am tired of being the only adult in a 2-adult household, tired of putting in all the effort while he languishes in bed during the day and merely exists at night due to insomnia. I am weary of being the only one aware that the outside world does not halt simply because I am not feeling well, and that I still have to meet expectations, whether I am ill, sleep-deprived, or just want to curl up and cry or take a lot of antipsychotics and drift away in the nearest river. I have asked NB for help, I have begged for it, and I have grown so frustrated that I have cried. I have even offered to create task lists similar to mine, which he knows are not private, in hopes that a few items could be removed from my responsibilities. I will admit that I have wanted him to experience some of the distress I feel. At one point, the household included a temporary 3rd adult. That was a different story, but it is relevant to mention the tension between the two of them. I was experiencing a mental health crisis while also being the only one working, cleaning, and making an effort for a friend who had seizures but refused to attend appointments alone. Alongside that, I also had to look after my child who himself expressed suicidal thoughts at the age of 10, and that was my primary focus. Although things do not seem to be improving in that realm, my son was finally assessed for neurodiversity privately. His situation at school is improving, and all I can do now is wait with him on support waiting lists for however long that takes. I need to add a quick content warning for mention of sexual assault in this paragraph. At that moment, I interrupted him and asked if he intended to read everything from the 7-page list he presented me with at 3:30 a.m., as I had jokingly told him not to treat me poorly all day and then act inappropriately during such a tumultuous time. These were matters we had already discussed extensively, things I had apologized for, and things I had forgiven him for, such as his sexually assaulting me while I slept. He also sent inappropriate pictures to someone he met online, interpreting my statement. If I am not sexually reciprocative enough for you, I would understand if you find someone else, as an invitation to act behind my back and then got blackmailed for it, only for me to learn about it from the police who visited him at his former home. Moreover, there have been 3 occasions where he has gotten angry and broken my belongings. I had to get a contraceptive implant because he regularly acted oddly about using contraceptives despite knowing we cannot have a child. After I experienced 2 medical abortions at home by myself, which he was aware would require support, he continued to avoid using protection, even at a time in my cycle when the pill would not have been effective. At that point, I determined a long-term option made more sense. I let him know, as I had expressed countless times, that if he dislikes me or my actions, he is free to leave. I do not have that luxury. If I am facing unstable mental health, where I behave in ways I fundamentally dislike, I cannot simply escape my own mind. He raised points we had discussed multiple times as examples of emotional manipulation, and shared how he had considered ending his life in various ways over the past few days. I added, taking a large amount of quetiapine and lying down in the river, throwing yourself off the train bridge or under the next lorry, wondering if you will return home to find that your son has gone through with one of those options we communicate with people, we move forward. He claimed to be too frightened to speak to me, because you always have something going on, and I feel I need to be your support. For months, I have been trying to check in with him regularly to ensure I do not overwhelm him further with the chaos of my life, hoping it would provide him the space to open up. No turmoil is my first struggle, and I am quite accustomed to putting on a brave face when things get tough. For a brief time, it was refreshing to have someone with whom I did not need to share years of backstory just to discuss something. I had also done some lifestyle coaching and currently receive weekly visits from a community support worker, making it easy to reduce the amount of venting I do. The significant difference is that for all the times he has stated I am not making an effort, because I have briefly complained about something I am finding challenging yet still managed to accomplish, I have been under community mental health care and utilizing local support services since 2023. At the same time, I was juggling 3 jobs, putting in tremendous effort to get my medication while dealing with an unhelpful practitioner, building a support network, getting on waiting lists for community assistance, participating in that when appropriate, and attending to my son as well as managing finances, the household, and work until I left in June of last year. He may have had challenging times, but before moving in with me, he would go radio silent for days or retreat behind his computer. But apparently, I am not trying. I informed him that any further grievances could be compiled into another 7-page document if he wished. I stated that I needed to use the restroom, and I exclaimed that I would not be punching a hole in my rental property's door while upset. I hoped he found it worthwhile to lose everything he had at his feet. Upon exiting the restroom, the argument continued. NB declared, "You have portrayed me as the villain once more for highlighting your shortcomings." I replied, "I am quite open to hearing about my shortcomings so that I can work on them. However, I do not appreciate your response of labeling me a hypocrite and an abuser when I requested that you leave after you punched a hole in my door." He countered, "That was not my reaction to your request for me to leave." To which I stated, "Except, chronologically, that is indeed what just transpired. A small part of me hoped this could be an opportunity to work on things by discussing the situation and resolving something by the week's end, even if it took you longer to move out. But that hope is gone now. I am sure you will have more to say about how I am portraying you as the villain once again. Oh, no. Fine, then go screw yourself. I recorded every moment of our conversation that day because I usually forget everything and wanted concrete proof of everything I said to him, so I would not have to doubt myself if he contradicted me later. Originally, this instinct felt like a red flag that I needed to do that, but now I am apprehensive about revisiting it because what if he is actually right? I allowed myself about 20 minutes to sob and then, since life continues on, I had to pick up my child from school and spent 5 hours until bedtime pretending that everything was fine while he returned to his computer. He still has not clarified whether he meant what he said or if he simply reacted poorly. I asked him if he realized this might likely be the end, and he confirmed it. Now, I question every behavior and action I have ever taken. Every time I speak, I wonder, am I about to say something terrible, manipulative, or insulting? I find myself wondering if the years of self-improvement I have invested have been merely a facade to conceal the fact that I am awful. I know I can behave poorly and say hurtful things. Anyone can. But do I genuinely represent a distasteful person? Am I crafting this post to portray him unfavorably, twisting it to benefit myself? Is chronicling so much of what he has said and done merely an attempt to play the victim while branding him, as he alleges, as the villain? My mother once remarked to someone, in my presence, that I possess a victim complex, and I feel as though I am validating that claim. That was Wednesday. Thursday and Friday are now a blur, but in hindsight, my to-do lists were rather short. On Thursday, my son had an at-home assessment and an eye appointment. On Saturday, I spent the morning with my child, dropped him off with NB, asked him to fill bags for a second trip to the skip, and then spent the afternoon with family completing that skip, run, and shopping. Upon returning, I found my son alone in the house with only hazy knowledge of NB's whereabouts. Late in the afternoon and all evening, I worked on my disorganized garden until my hands were caked in mud and covered in cuts, then spent the night addressing issues in the house. I slept on the couch that night and only saw him twice. On Sunday, I dedicated approximately 9 hours to the entire weekly cleaning, much of it assisted by my son, who came downstairs at 10 a.m. to inform me that he had stripped his bedsheets, put them in the wash, and was eager for his next task. I may have mentioned that this child is only 10 years old. NB remained in bed until about 6 p.m., reminding me once again why I need this situation to change. Late that night, he came into my bedroom around 3:30 a.m., prompting us to chat for 2 hours. I asked him, now that he was awake, if he could ensure I woke up for my 7:30 alarm. By 8 a.m., he was fast asleep, while somehow I managed to race around the house, getting dressed, feeding the cat, and preparing my child's bag, allowing us to make it to school on time. Afterward, I tackled the weekly grocery shopping and now find myself seated on a chair in my kitchen, a place I rarely sit down, as my morning routine typically involves enjoying a coffee, reviewing my to-do list, completing a few tasks while my coffee cools, and then continuing. My legs are presently aching, and I am struggling to get anything accomplished, feeling guilty for spending 2 hours in a chair crying over a Reddit post instead of tackling my numerous tasks. NB washed the dinner dishes from the previous night and is still in bed. We have been on and off, mostly on, for nearly 6 years. It may or may not be apparent, but I love this infuriating individual. I do not want him to leave, yet I need him to. It has become glaringly clear that neither of us is happy, and that this arrangement is not working, at least not in our current circumstances. My 10-year-old is devastated and had a concerning reaction to the news of NB's eventual move, adding another layer for me to consider. Meanwhile, the outside world continues to turn, and I feel overwhelmed trying to handle everything and partially distract myself from my thoughts. I strive to maintain a positive demeanor for my son, keep my composure when needed, and manage the household while questioning my very sense of self following such accusations. His family only discovered my existence this past Christmas, and I am scheduled to meet them soon at a funeral. Now I am uncertain if that is wise or merely a means to avoid contemplating worse outcomes. My emotions have been chaotic for weeks. Mid-January, I apparently went for 3 to 4 days without sleep while still managing my responsibilities. I vented my frustrations while gardening on Saturday. I screamed at people, objects, and myself, and I have even seemingly resumed the habit of repeatedly head-butting the wall when I become overwhelmed. Every time I go out, I feel on the verge of initiating a confrontation. I even lost my patience with my child earlier today because he was upset that the soap was not located where I mentioned it would be. It was there, just behind an object. After this week's events, I am ready to contemplate resting in peace for the first time in months. I feel like I am unraveling and managing that facade way too many times already to drop my personal mask right now. I am solely motivated by the fear of the potential consequences of my inaction. It is as if I am two different people. On one hand, I feel like a superhuman for handling everything I have, pragmatic and objective, wondering why the other side cannot comprehend it, questioning if this other part is simply terrified of change. On the other hand, I desperately want to cry continuously, pleading for this not to occur. I want to scream, break things, hurt myself, and explore every possible solution to prevent this situation. At this moment, I have moved from the kitchen to the bedroom to pick up the shopping and now find myself standing in my chaotic bedroom, chugging down a Powerade and hoping for its effectiveness. I am staring at the man unconscious in my bed, and somehow I feel nothing, except for the dread of the previously mentioned fact that I have done and will accomplish so very little that is productive today. Additionally, I feel a nagging annoyance that even after dedicating all of January to conducting a written inventory of every room and cupboard, I cannot locate the carrier bags I need for clothing donations. I am resisting the idea of getting day drunk, but given how much time I have spent complaining, it is now afternoon, so perhaps a glass of wine would not be detrimental. It appears I have spent another 45 minutes on this, so off to drink wine and grieve over my neglected to-do list. Thank you for taking the time to read this. Story 2. The time one person's over-the-top sense of what is acceptable or not in the workplace changed company IT policy forever. Yet another story from my volunteer job. This is the account of the time when one individual's excessive sense of what is acceptable in the workplace and what is not prompted a company-wide change in information technology policy. The background: I have been providing customer service and technical support on a volunteer basis for over 10 years, and occasionally, before the pandemic, we would give tours of our call center to schools and other interested groups. This story revolves around one such tour group. Before we delve into the details, you, the reader, would likely benefit from some understanding of our policy regarding employee desktop wallpapers, as it becomes significant later. Prior to this incident, the policy was straightforward as long as the image is not something a reasonable person would generally find offensive. Employees were free to express themselves with whatever background image they chose. The more detailed version of this policy states employees are permitted to express themselves through their desktop backgrounds, provided the image would not be deemed offensive, shocking, or distasteful by a reasonable person. Examples of acceptable images include, but are not limited to, cars, beaches or other scenery, family, pets, school logos, etc. Images that are strictly prohibited include, but are not limited to, political or religious messages, photos depicting subjects who are not fully clothed, including no underwear, swimsuits, topless or bikini shots, applicable to all genders and identities, images depicting acts of violence, and so on. Images that should be used cautiously are those featuring individuals other than oneself, images of minor children who are not one's own or for whom one is responsible, or images of houses, either one's own or those belonging to others. As you can see, this is fairly standard for a casual office environment, but apparently not squeaky clean enough for one individual. The incident: we had a high school tour group visiting one day, which went well overall. Shortly before the conclusion of the tour, one of the chaperones accompanying the group noticed my colleague's desktop displaying a picture of him fully clothed in a white t-shirt, jeans, and shoes, working on his car that was up on blocks. According to this woman, a person working on his car was considered so offensive that it warranted a complaint to the chief executive officer. We'll refer to her as K for this story, several hours after she and her group departed. She called Kay in a fit of rage, ranting that, "You shouldn't allow your employees to have that kind of filth displayed on their screens where anyone can walk by and see it," and similar statements. After many clarifying questions, as the woman was not being very clear about what kind of filth she was referring to or whose screen the supposed filth was on, Kay was able to locate the colleague in question and asked him to show her his desktop background. Upon reviewing it, Kay responded to the individual, stating in no uncertain terms, "After reviewing the image in question, it does meet company guidelines for acceptable background images." This individual remained unsatisfied, so after meeting with all department heads, employees from various departments, and several IT personnel, the entire group found nothing offensive in the wallpaper in question. Kay issued an order for the Information Technology Department to develop a standard background that all employees can agree on, along with appropriate procedures and forms to accommodate medical exceptions to the rule. Once the image, forms, and procedures are developed, the standard wallpaper should be deployed to all employee workstations joined to the domain via Microsoft Group Policy, and this group policy should prevent the end user from changing the wallpaper in any way. The resultant group policy should follow the employee no matter where he/she/they log in. Furthermore, any employee with a signed doctor's note indicating the need for an exception to the wallpaper should be placed in a separate organizational unit, which will be exempt from the desktop wallpaper policy. That doctor's note only needs to state, "I, doctor's name, am treating employee, and am familiar with their current medical status, and they need to be allowed to change their desktop wallpaper." This note does not need to specify the exact medical condition, necessitating the wallpaper change request. Finally, employee-owned devices should be joined to the domain, and employees will be required to use their corporate login on personal devices while on site. Of all the options, the logo of a company-wide favorite show, the Italian animated series, Winx Club, was selected. Initially, it was required that it be the 1024x768 Winx Club logo with a transparent background, allowing employees to place any color of their choice behind it, but this did not go over well, as some individuals have no sense of color combinations. Therefore, I was approached by the IT department head to create a Photoshop file featuring the logo on a solid white background with the words, "Winx Corporate Desktop 2.3, in black text located in the upper left and lower right corners of the image. I accomplished this, and it was implemented. Many employees complained that the solid white background was too harsh on their eyes, prompting another request for modification to a solid black background with white text, updating the text to Winx Corporate Desktop 2.3x, thus leading to the establishment of the mandatory corporate desktop wallpaper. Since then, there have been no complaints, either internally or externally, regarding it. This is not the first experience for me or my colleagues with a mandatory corporate desktop wallpaper, as most of us attended schools where, to prevent students from displaying inappropriate images, all student workstations were set to some variant of either the school colors or the school logo. Most, if not all, of the mandatory school wallpapers or company wallpapers, such as AT&T, I appreciated and wish I could rotate on my laptop or mobile phone. I've had a few of the school ones, but those have since been lost to time on several hard drives and flash drives. One may wonder, if the image was not offensive and adhered to the guidelines, why didn't Kay simply tell the upset individual to go away? The answer is straightforward. Kay did not want to spend hours on the phone or via email defending each employee's choice of desktop wallpaper, even if it clearly fell within the guidelines. Rather than defend a moving target, she believed it would be easier for all of us to create a standard, thereby making it simple to explain any complaints away as, "That's just the logo of a software tool we use," which is a partial truth, as our intranet portal is called Winx Portal Social Intranet Platform, which is essentially a rebadged V-bulletin featuring the Winx Club logo in the upper right corner. Both Kay and I recognize that some individuals might take issue with the Winx Club show for various reasons. Nevertheless, since the show was aimed at children to pre-teens, with a U.S. television rating of TVY7 at most, its content would generally not be deemed offensive, and anyone who has a problem with the themes of teamwork, friendship, acceptance, and self-discovery leaves us unsure of how to respond. The aftermath, since the corporate desktop has been implemented, no complaints have been submitted, and several people have requested a copy of the background for their personal computers at home. Consequently, K and IT have granted me permission to release the final PNGs and the PSDs. As one, the Winx Club logo is available online, since it's a cartoon that aired on television in the early 2000s, allowing anyone to recreate the corporate desktop appearance. 2. The modifications we made are so simple that anyone with basic Photoshop skills can replicate them at home and achieve the same result. And 3. We take pride in our company-wide appreciation for this show. Therefore, if one searches diligently, they can find the original file or the PSDs to create their own version. If possible, I will provide a link below for you to download. Here's a link to the final image, https drive google.com file d1rcl 0zck3 yqcf rkg ridti 5 mzj flz 0 inj view usp equals sharing. https drive google.com file d1rcl 0zck3 yqcf rkg ridti 5 mzj flz 0 inj view usp equals sharing. Here's a link to the folder containing everything one would need to create their own edition, not including Photoshop, of course, along with a few bonuses featuring an alternate version with a gold Winx Club logo and 2 different versions showcasing the American flag for our celebration of Independence Day, since we are US. Based https drive google.com drive folders 19G VKQRWC, AWX, 025 TQWOIs QQH2, YUGG3 USP, equals sharing. https drive google.com drive folders 19G VKQRWC, AWX, 025 TQWOIs QQH2, YUGG3 USP, equals sharing. Regarding the medical exception policy, I have previously asked IT if anyone has ever taken advantage of the medical exception, and according to the department head, no one has taken advantage of it during her tenure, and some of the longer-serving individuals in that department claim they have only witnessed it once, and that individual who needed it did not abuse it, considering the loophole is so large one could drive a tank through it. I hope this story of one individual being overly dramatic and our company's response using group policy brought a smile to someone. Story 3. I, 24M, am worried about an ex, 26F. I'm still close with she's pulling away from everyone. What can I do? TLDR, my former girlfriend, with whom I am still on friendly terms, has disengaged from the people around her. I have had no contact, do not know where she is, and have no idea how she is doing. About 2.5 years ago, I, 24M, was in a relationship with a girl, let's refer to her as Sarah, 26F. We shared a nice, healthy relationship, but ultimately ended it as we were both going to study abroad in different countries. Sarah did not believe in long-distance relationships. It had not worked for her in the past, and she had dreams of remaining in her exchange country after the program. Even though we separated, we maintained an excellent relationship. Occasionally, we would text, catch up, and update each other on our lives. It was always really pleasant, and I genuinely valued having her in my life. Sarah is from South America and is an international student residing in the Netherlands, which is where I am from. During our time together, her social circle was not extensive but was supportive. She lived in Amsterdam with 3 housemates, 2 of whom were her close friends. However, Sarah has always been somewhat shy and anxious about meeting new people. Approximately 10 months ago, I reached out to see how she was doing. We met in The Hague, where she had relocated after her exchange, a city where she did not know anyone. She appeared to be in good spirits, but I could see she was feeling isolated. She mentioned that she had not had much contact with her best friends and had even canceled plans with them. She was concerned that they were upset with her and unsure if they still wanted to spend time with her. I encouraged her to reconnect, and a few weeks later, I noticed on Instagram that she was spending time with them again. It was reassuring to see her re-establishing those connections. In the weeks following our meeting, we communicated regularly until, unexpectedly, she sent me a message about a cockroach in her room. She had always been terrified of such things, so I volunteered to help her clean or remove it, not that I am an expert on cockroaches in any way. But after that, she stopped replying. I know Sarah tends to withdraw and become unresponsive even when things appear fine, especially after being very engaged in our conversations, so I did not take it personally. In early November, I reached out once more. She was delighted to hear from me and sent numerous messages, updating me on her life and even sharing pictures from our time together, expressing that she had been looking at them lately and reminiscing about fond memories. She had moved to Utrecht. Due to the cockroach issue, the thought of them spoiled that room for her. She liked Utrecht, but she was subletting and mentioned that she needed to leave by the end of the week. Finding accommodation in the Netherlands is challenging, so I offered to assist her in her search since I knew people seeking roommates. Sarah has a grandmother in Portugal, and she told me she was planning to visit her for a while, although it wasn't an ideal solution. I offered to help her pack and relocate, but then she ceased responding again. The day before she was supposed to move out, I sent her a message expressing my hope that everything was going smoothly, reiterating my offer to assist her, and suggesting that if she had time in the future, I would love to go for a drink and catch up without any pressure. She replied, saying she would love to do that as well, apologized for not responding due to the hectic moving days, and said she would text me when she returned to the Netherlands because she would like to grab a drink. However, after that, she stopped replying once more. I continued to send her housing opportunities, as she had requested. About a month later, I messaged her again to check if she was doing well and to inquire about her situation. No reply. On New Year's, I sent her a simple message to let her know I was still thinking of her. Yet again, no response. At this point, I began to feel concerned. I had an instinct that something was amiss. Yes, her withdrawn behavior is typical, but this seemed excessive. This week, I reached out to her best friend, messaging her to say that I had spoken to Sarah a few months back but had not heard from her since. I expressed my hope that Sarah was okay and asked if she had any information. Her friend responded almost immediately, saying something to the effect that she completely understood why I was worried because she was very concerned as well. She had not heard from Sarah since December. According to her, Sarah sometimes slept on her couch. The only detail she knew was that Sarah was or at least had been staying at her internship manager's home in Amsterdam. She clarified that there was nothing problematic about it. Her internship manager is an older woman with a spouse and children, and Sarah was occupying their guest room. But even with that arrangement, her friend remarked, the whole situation is a mess. I am unsure what to do. She has distanced herself from her small support network in the Netherlands. She has not responded in over 3 months. I have considered making a phone call, but I do not want to pressure her. At the same time, I am sincerely worried about her mental state. While she tends to withdraw, this feels distinct, like she is genuinely isolating herself. I do not know her current address, and her social media is inactive. I care about her deeply, even though we are no longer in a romantic relationship. I just want her to be all right.